now, again, gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Ms. Courtney Fairchild. Courtney, welcome to VIP, and it's all yours.
Well, thank you so much. I am excited to be here and appreciate VIP so much for having me. We're here today to talk about the GSA Multiple Award Schedule. Is it right for your company? I do know that as soon as you register in SAM, there are all of these telemarketers that call you and tell you about the billions and billions of dollars that you could take down if you had a GSA schedule. So we want to talk today about the GSA schedule, what it is, can you get it, and should you get it? So we will cover all of those topics. As Mauricio pointed out, I'm the president and CEO of Global Services. We've been in business, we're a woman-owned small business. We've been in business for over 25 years, have done over 3,000 GSA schedules. Ranging from products, services, there isn't probably something we haven't touched. So I am looking forward to spending time with you, encourage you to ask questions as we go along in the chat, and we will do our best to tailor the presentation to all of you. Before we get started, Erin's going to run a quick poll for me to find out who in the audience currently has the GSA schedule. Should show up on your screen.
We'll give them about 30 seconds and
Great.
I will close it and launch the results on your screen.
Thanks. It looks like we're about 75% no and 25% yes. So that'll help. A lot of what we cover today will be helpful to those of you that do have a GSA schedule, because we're going to get a lot into whether or not you want to have a GSA schedule. And a lot of that has to do with the price reduction clause and monitoring pricing practices. So I think it will be helpful for both, but that helps me understand a little bit about where everyone is. Well, thank you, Lori. A subcontractor on one is what Lori says. Great. Thanks so much. All right, let's get started. We are going to do a quick synopsis of the GSA Multiple Award Schedule so that we can all get on the same page about this contract and what we're talking about. The first thing that's interesting is people use the term GSA schedule to mean a couple of different things. So what really is the GSA schedule? When people refer to it, they're usually referring to their own contract number or the list of all contractors, which is really what the GSA schedule is. It's a list of catalog of contractors that have been awarded a contract by GSA that can be used by all federal agencies. The program is meant to mirror commercial buying practices and is past performance based. I'm going to say that again, because one of the interesting things about the GSA Multiple Award Schedule, when we are talking about can you get a schedule, it has nothing to do with your capabilities. It has everything to do with your past performance over the last 2 years. So it's very important that you understand that you're looking backwards as opposed to forward in terms of capability, and keep it up to date over time, which we'll talk about. And it's really just meant to facilitate a faster, easier government procurement, right? So there's over 10,000 commercial items and services from 15,000 companies. And we will talk about the different categories and such as well. So we have a first question from Stephen. Good morning. I put in for a GSA mass, but have been waiting for GSA to finish their evaluation since September 23rd. Never received a follow-up from the contract specialist. What should they do? So GSA schedules, once you submit, it generally takes 3 to 6 months for them to review it. So it's not out of the norm. But if you, my email address is in here and my contact information. If you want to send me some information on the contract specialist, contract officer, we can talk about different centers take longer than others. It depends on what you put in and who you're dealing with and what their timelines are. But GSA is not a fast organization when it comes, and nor do they communicate very effectively. Some centers do a much better job than others. So Stephen, if you want to send me that question via email, I'm happy to do that as well. The second question from Eric is, does private sector past performance count? Absolutely. When we're talking about past performance, it can be any customer. It can be as a subcontractor, commercial work, state and local. And I have some slides that will go through past performance, so we'll talk about that. But that's a really good question, because most government contracts and the larger GWECs, as you talk about them, require federal prime experience, and the GSA multiple award schedule does not, as long as you've been in business for 2 years. And again, we'll go through what those requirements are as we go along. The only reason, I'm going to pause for a quick second and say that because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should get a GSA schedule. You need to understand to whom you're marketing, what federal agencies you're targeting, and how they buy before you bother to jump on any contract vehicle, really. As an example, the Navy purchases their IT through their own MAC seaport. If you are qualified, you can get a GSA schedule for IT services, but if you intend to sell to the Navy, that would be a waste of your time if that's the only place you intended to try to do work. So make sure before you embark on any of the things that we're going to talk about today, that you have a sense of your ordering agencies and how they buy, and even down to the sub-agencies. It's important to do that research, because you have to make sales through GSA or you can lose the contract. If you don't do $100,000 of sales in the first 5 years, the contract will not be renewed. So having it is helpful, and they've elongated the time period to allow for up to 5 years to make a sale, or multiple sales that in aggregate exceed $100,000. But this is a lot of work if, in fact, no dollars are going to come to you for it. So let's talk about the recent changes in the multiple award schedule program. It used to be that there were 24 different GSA multiple award schedules that had different scopes of work. Some were services, specific kind of services, like you might be familiar with the IT Schedule 70 or the professional services schedule. And GSA said, boy, we shouldn't be maintaining 24, because what happened is companies that had multiple services or product lines had to obtain multiple GSA schedule contracts. So they had to go through the entire proposal process again. And then they, on the back end, had to maintain, from a compliance standpoint, reporting and compliance on multiple contracts. And it was causing a lot of administration, both for GSA and for the contractor. So the simplification is to make it easier to access for your clients, your potential clients, so they don't get confused about where they should be purchasing because you only have one contract number. And to have a single set of terms and conditions that apply across this contract to everyone that are the same. As I said, the lesser administrative burden. And it was meant to reduce duplication of products and services across different special item numbers. One of the biggest changes when they consolidated the GSA schedule or schedules together is that they moved from a random set of special item numbers. Those are how GSA defines the different types of products and services that are on the GSA schedule contract, into and moved it over to NAICS-based, North American Industrial Classification Standard-based purchasing. This helped ordering agencies immensely, because they may not have known what 874-1 was, but they do know what 541611 is. So it's helped the ordering agencies feel a little more comfortable with the purchase. And it's all following category management. So there are large categories that follow category management, which makes sense because this is GSA, and no matter how you feel about it, that's the way that these are getting categorized. for your understanding. Let's talk about the salient terms and conditions of the GSA schedule. It is a government-wide contract that is available for use by any federal agency, and it can be either domestic or worldwide scope. That is completely up to you when you prepare your offer. It's also an open season solicitation. Very few federal procurements exist without a due date. This is open all year round, and you can put in your offer whenever you're ready, which is really good and really bad because it tends to be the thing that people stop and start work on, and then something comes up that does have a deadline, a due date, and so then you put it back down, and by the time you pick it back up, the solicitation has been refreshed, and you've got to download the new solicitation, and things have changed. So I think it's important to, if you decide to get a GSA schedule, to treat it like anything else and give yourself a proper project plan and due dates. All GSA multiple award schedules have an initial 5-year period of performance with 3 5-year follow-on options, called an evergreen contract, and that's as long as a contract can exist in the federal government. There are no selling caps when you are providing services through the GSA schedule. So you can run as much money through the contract vehicle as you can. There's no SAM.gov posting requirements for RFQs that come out through GSA. Those are handled under the eBuy and GSA Advantage system. So if you don't have a GSA schedule and an RFQ comes out under a special item number through GSA, you will not see it on SAM or anywhere else. And the only way to see it is if you have been awarded that special item number on your own GSA multiple award schedule contract. GSA ordering requirements are that you have to have 3 receive back bids for 3 requests for quotations and make a best value award. If something is posted on eBuy, anyone that has the special item number can see it and potentially bid, but it is required that you at least name 3 and get 3 bids back to make your best value determination. That is not necessarily best price, although we all know that price plays so heavily into federal awards. Because your pricing is already determined fair and reasonable at the master contract level, it's a faster it's a faster procurement. GSA has said, here, we've set the ceiling pricing, and you can evaluate and negotiate at the task order level. There is a 0.75% industrial funding fee, IFF. That's the use of the contract fee to the government. So when you do your pricing, you will add in the 0.75% because that's what the government is paying GSA to maintain. They do not receive the Federal Acquisition Service that runs this program, does not receive congressional funds. They are self-funded by the industrial funding fee. Quarterly or monthly reporting is involved, depending on which option. If you're submitting your offer, you'll get to guide that, and we could talk about it in a little bit when we go through pricing. But you're either going to be reporting quarterly or monthly. So there's some compliance involved. There's a lot of things to think about when you're thinking about getting on a GSA schedule. But one of them is, what will it take on the back end? What do I have to do to stay compliant? And will I have the resources, to at least make sure that I can go in and report my monthly sales or quarterly sales and remit that 0.75% industrial funding fee is that very first requirement. Why might you want a GSA schedule? Well, advantages for the government are slightly different from advantages for industry. From a government standpoint, it is hard for people to understand often that a federal contracting officer could have the need, the budget, and the authority to purchase, and no actual way to get to the person they want to purchase, the company they want to purchase from. So think of this GSA schedule as a master catalog of approved vendors. back when we still were all in offices and had actual office space. When you needed to order office supplies, you went to your catalog. This is like a huge catalog for contracting officers and ordering agencies. Orders through GSA can be placed by any government employee with purchase authority. That's usually a contracting person, but sometimes you'll get some program managers that may have purchase authority. And then there are other things that are really helpful about a GSA schedule. They allow for multiple GSA schedule holders to team together to provide a total solution. They allow for blanket purchase agreements, repetitive purchasing agreements at larger amounts. And as I said, the fact that the ceiling pricing is already determined fair and reasonable by GSA makes it a lesser price evaluation than you would normally have to do for a full and open competition. All right, Veronica has a question. Are you penalized in any way if you do not have sales in some of the states that have been awarded on the GSA schedule? I'm not sure I understand the question because this is open domestically. You could do all of your work in one state and you wouldn't be penalized. So if I haven't answered your question, you can clarify for me. It doesn't matter what states you're actually, it matters that it goes through the contract vehicle. It is based on total revenue that runs through the contract. Sorry, Veronica asked, is it based on total revenue? And it is. It is, you have to do over 100,000. It could be on a single order, it could be on all the orders, but you have to exceed revenue of $100,000 to keep the contract after 5 years. The advantages for industry are, you're welcome. Advantages for industry, number one, are really only that you are working with an ordering agency that wants to use the GSA schedule. We talk about having as many different ways for ordering agencies to get to you as possible. They can do an SD, VOSB, or a veteran-owned set-aside, right? They can do a GSA schedule order. You want to have as many different ways as possible. So it's really that you know who your ordering agency is, but then there's all of these other things that make the GSA schedule attractive. It's considered a priority source of supply under FAR Part 8. So it's not a mandatory use, but it is considered a priority source of supply. I like the GSA schedule because it allows a direct customer relationship between you and your customer. While GSA maintains the master contract and terms and conditions pricing with you, the relationship that you have with the ordering agency and using the contract is a direct one. So there's no GSA in the middle between you and your customer. It also offers limited competition. Having to get only 3 RFQs really limits the field, and there's fewer, especially if you're going to start talking about set-asides, which we will. You can do veteran-owned set-aside through GSA schedule, an ordering agency can. So it really can cut down on the competition. How many companies have been awarded this special item number and how many of them are veteran-owned? It allows for both small and large business participation. The rules are roughly the same for both. And the speed is really why the schedule is so attractive. It allows for procurement to happen in 1 to 2 weeks, as opposed to a full and open, which can be 9 months. We have a couple of questions that came in. The first one, may a non-GSA contractor serve as a subcontractor to a GSA member? There is nothing in the multiple award schedule that stops you from being able to subcontract. However, if it is a set aside, you either have to limit how much to the subcontractor, or use a similarly situated subcontractor to ensure that you're not in violation of the set aside itself. But it's absolutely allowable to do subcontracting through GSA. All right, next question is, what is the difference between a federal supply schedule and a GSA schedule? Can a company have both? They're the same thing. Great question. The federal supply schedule is the same thing as the multiple award schedule, but there are also federal supply schedules run by the VA for medical supplies and services. So there are 5 of the federal supply schedules run by the VA, and then GSA runs their multiple award schedule. So you may, it can be the same thing, or if you're talking about any of the medical, you'll be talking through Hines, Illinois in the VA office. Okay, the other question we have is, when contracting officers and OSDBUs won't return phone calls or emails, is there an alternate method for determining what agencies and sub-agencies use the GSA math? The quick answer to this might be that if you know who your competitors are, you can look up their sales. There's something called the Schedule Sales Query. It's run by GSA, where each contract you can see how much revenue is running through your competitor's schedule, who's using it. But what you don't see is what ordering agencies bought those things. You can then take that contract number and go into FPDS on sam.gov and look up the contract number to see what ordering agencies are actually purchasing from off that contract. So it's a longer route to get there, but that is one way to figure out a little bit. If you know anything about incumbents or previous procurements, knowing how to do market research to find those things out is tedious, but it's extremely helpful. You can also look in agency forecasts. Oftentimes they will tip you off to how they intend to do certain procurements. But at some point you just have to keep trying to get into the OSDBU as well. But thanks for the question. Okay, so now that we know why it's attractive, let's talk about the small business eligibility, right? So I was talking about this just a moment ago, that ordering agencies can set aside orders or BPAs for any of the socioeconomic groups. 8A, HUBZone, woman-owned, veteran-owned, SDV, OSB, SDB. So those are things they can check off. It is easier for an ordering agency, well, easier if they understand how to use the GSA schedule, for an ordering agency to do a set-aside through the GSA multiple award schedule than it is to do the J&A justification for a sole source. I know as a woman-owned business, we struggle with the fact that, and I know that the veteran program does too, that ordering agencies have a lesser amount of work that they have to do for an 8A sole source than they do for a sole source through veteran or women-owned businesses, or HUBZone for that matter. So what ends up happening is they're less likely to want to do it. What we have found is many ordering agencies are happy to do a set aside through the GSA schedule. But again, you need to know your ordering agencies, how they want to buy, and start to guide some of this conversation to drive business to your contract. And now you only have to recertify your contract size every 5 years on GSA. So when your contract comes up for extension, you will recertify your socio as well as small or large business size, unless the company has been purchased, in which case mergers and acquisitions give you, I think 30 or 60 days, I don't recall offhand, to go in and make that change. So if you grow organically, it's a great contract vehicle to elongate some of that small business or socio status. All right, we have a question. Is there an entry program for small businesses that do not have past performance or have the required revenue? You will hear GSA talk about something called the springboard for GSA schedules, but it's extremely flawed because while it allows for the substitution for past performance on the technical side, it doesn't allow that on the pricing side. And when you see that you have to have sold any labor category or product and have an invoice support for it to be able to put it on contract, the program is extremely flawed. And we've seen companies not pass the financial review that's required as well. So they have work to do on that. And the sad answer to the question that's asked is not for GSA multiple award schedule. No, there's really not a program that there's not an avenue for a brand new business to be able to submit, get awarded at least what I believe will be a usable contract. Because I will have a company come to me and say, for instance, I build myself. I'm the one billable. I have a single labor category, and they have enough past performance to be able to actually win the contract. But the problem is they have one labor category. And when the RFQs come out, there's no way to map, bid, and put in a successful offer for that work. So when we go through the requirements, you also want to consider, will this be usable? Just because I can have a GSA contract number doesn't mean that I can necessarily win business with it. And I think that's an important point as well. Thanks for the question. The Trade Agreement Act is a part of the GSA schedule solicitation. So be sure that your products are trade agreement compliant and that your services are trade agreement compliant. You can't provide services out of India for work on a GSA schedule. So it's very important that you know that where your products are unmade and where your services are provided. Back to the other question that was asked. So it is best to be a sub under a prime. I do think that when you are first starting out, the easiest way to try to break into the federal government, Mauricio and I were talking about this earlier, is as a subcontractor. There's a far lesser requirement for past performance to do work as a sub than as a prime. And as you do work as a sub, you build up your past performance and your pricing. But you're going to see as I go through the pricing analysis in just a little bit, why you need to be careful about what you are charging if ultimately long-term, you're intending to get on the GSA schedule. Okay, so now we're looking at the sales. They haven't closed out 23 sales yet, so I have 19 through 22. The large categories are listed down the left-hand side. I have not put all of them on here. I put the highest grossing of the large categories. You will see a couple of things of note on this slide that I want to point out. One is that the program's growing overall, right? In 2019, 32 billion. In 2022, 41 billion, and it's higher in 23. There's a reason for that. The uptick in sales, think about COVID and the need for existing contract vehicles that are already in place because they didn't have procurement folks to be able to do it. You will think about also the fact that they made this consolidation that made it easier for ordering agencies to understand how to purchase under NAICS as opposed to SINs. They're still called SINs, but they're based on NAICS codes. And lastly, this is very important. GSA has started to do something that they call market research as a service, the MRAS, M-R-A-S. So existing contractors will know what I'm talking about. There is a shortage of procurement folks at ordering agencies. And in order to put out a procurement, they have a requirement for requests for information due to the FAR. GSA has said, I know you don't have time to do this. We'll do it for you for free. All the rest of the federal government, send us your requirements and we will put out the RFI and give you detailed results. Fantastic idea. But then they only send it to their GSA schedule holders. The MRAS emails go out to their GWAC and GSA schedule holders under specific SINs. So you can only reply for GSA schedule special or RFIs that you have been qualified under. There's not a master list, it's by special item number. Someone just asked, is there a list of primes? I have some links on the last slide. There's something called the Schedules e-library that lists every single contractor and shows the price list for every single contractor awarded a special item number. So you can see all of them. I wanted to give you sort of a visual on how a GSA order runs. It is an agency that issues a task and they send it to 3 GSA schedule holders, make a best value determination, and issue the task order. As you're doing the work, that $ goes to you, the agency pays you directly, and then you pay 0.75% back to GSA for the use of the program. Under $10,000, the micro purchase threshold, an ordering agency can order from any GSA schedule holder. Over $10,000, they have to evaluate 3 RFQs and make that best value determination. But as I said earlier, the really great part of this program is that this allows for a direct relationship between you and the ordering agency. Tamika said that this program doesn't seem very fair. I'm not sure that fair comes into play a lot in federal procurement. I would agree with you, but it's the rules that we're playing with. So we're just trying to maximize to whatever extent we can. Oh, this is a good question that just came in. We're a protege in the All Small NPP program. Our mentor has GSA for Microsoft products and services. Would it be easier for us to get a GSA? So if you sell those products through the mentor's contract vehicle, they're going to have top line revenue and it's going to be a large business sale. If you get your own contract, then it would have your socio associated with the contract number, right? And then if you want, you can also obtain a JV GSA mass, which is a combination of the member company's pricing, but it has to be listed out individually. Each company has to list out their contract, their labor categories or products with the parentheses of the member's company after it. So it can get a little complicated because it doesn't allow for the use of each other's labor categories or products, meaning you have to prove as the protege your invoice support for labor categories, and then you're only allowed to use them as when doing work as the JV. You can't swap out labor categories with each other. Eric asked, is there a program for partnering with prime contractors? Asking, as a hybrid entrepreneur trying to break into the public sector, it seems like subcontracting is a great first step. There is no federal program. However, there are a number of places like VIP and organizations that help sponsor events that will have matchmaking with prime contractors. I know Women Impacting Public Policy does it. I know that the 8A, if anyone's going out to the 8A conference, they have matchmaking. There are opportunities to participate in things like that, but there's no master list other than every contractor is listed in the System for Award Management, or SAM, but it takes a lot of culling through to find those things. Thanks, Eric. Okay, so now that we have talked about what the GSA schedule is, I want to focus on do I qualify for a GSA schedule? So I'm going to tell you the showstoppers. I'm not going to go through the entire solicitation and tell you everything that you need, because we'd be here all day. But I do want you to understand what I think would qualify you or prevent you from moving forward with a bid if you decided that it's something that you need. So let's start from a services standpoint. On the technical side, there are past performance requirements. First of all, the GSA schedule has in the solicitation that you should have been in business running revenue for a minimum of 2 years. As I said, you can submit in less than 2 years under the Springboard program, but I do not believe that it will be helpful or successful based on the need to prove financials as well as sold services. You have to have been in business for 2 years, and you have to provide your financial statements as well. Profit, loss, and balance sheet, they don't have to be audited. But then you have to have past experience. Remember earlier, I told you that you have to have done what you want to put on a GSA schedule in the last 2 years. If you're pursuing any of the IT services special item numbers, you have to have at least 2 projects that are in that scope that you have either completed in the last 2 years, or at least 12 months of the contract has to have been completed, the base period if it's ongoing. So it can be ongoing, but you have to have already done a year of that work. If you are looking at services and you want to focus on professional services, non-IT, each special item number will require just 1 project that you've completed in the last 2 years. And these projects, they can be, as we said, they can be subcontracts, they can be commercial, but they have to be in similar complexity and more importantly, scope to the work that you want to be doing on GSA. So they're looking for a signed contract to ensure that the scope of that contract matches the definition of their special item number. Alex asked can you join at any time, or do you have to wait for an on-ramp? So that's the best part of a GSA schedule. It's open all of the time, any day. You can jump in, and while everyone has 5-year periods of performance, they're running at all different times depending on when their actual award date was. The other part of past performance that is required in the proposal are customer references. You either have to have 3 CPARs, the contractor pass assessment rating system. You either have 3 active CPARs, or you need to have what are called past performance questionnaires, PPQs, that are they're in the solicitation, have to be completed by 3 clients that is work in scope in the last 3 years. So this again goes to the point that the Springboard doesn't work well if you don't have 3 customers, because it doesn't waive this requirement. If you don't have 3 CPARs, again, you can do the PPQs. If you have 1 CPAR, then you do a CPAR and 2 PPQs, any combination thereof, but you've got to get to 3. Alex asked, which one would you recommend for services? I'm going to need more context there. What would you recommend for services? Jeff asked, for qualifying for GSA Mass, is the required past performance based on the NAICS code? My past performance with the VA was under a strange and uncommon NAICS for our industry, but the work was extremely relevant. Would I be able to use it? That is completely subjective, Jeff. I love this question, so let's talk through it. There are 900 some NAICS, and there's only 300 some that GSA has adopted as special item numbers. So it is natural that it could have a wacky NAICS code that doesn't really align to one of the special item numbers. But the statement of work in that signed contract is going to guide whether or not those services fit and subjectively reviewed by GSA whether those services fit another special item number. There are other GWACs out there and other contracts that GSA runs that would allow for you to go back to the ordering agency and have them sign off on the mapping. And the GSA multiple award schedule doesn't allow for that. So let me point out that as you are picking your technical projects for write-up, the utmost important thing is scope, not that you pick your biggest and best project. GSA is not determining how good you are. They're determining if you are compliant with their solicitation. So you may have a $100,000 project that really reads better for a particular scope of a special item number, and $1 million project that was written in a way that you could drive a truck through the SOW on purpose, but is now not helpful to you. So you may choose a smaller project that still fits the bill just for the technical proposal. Good question. All right, on financials, Charles asked, not springboard focused, as an exclusive distributor to the government for manufactured products, our company's financials are covered by the manufacturer for any government purchase. At this time, our last 2 years of sales are minimal. We have client references needed. How do we present this in our financial requirements to GSA? They simply ask for a profit, loss, and balance sheet. And so there's no minimum amount of sales that you have to show, but they are going to look to see that you don't have a loss. If you have loss, you can provide a letter of explanation. And Charles, I probably would provide a letter of explanation for this scenario as well with my financials so that there's an understanding of that. All right, one more question. If you're a subcontractor on contract, the CPAR comes from the prime. How and when do you approach the prime to get these? You can't include a CPAR that is for the prime. In that scenario, you've got to get a past performance questionnaire from the prime to you. And when do you approach them? It really depends on the relationship, the timing, and when you're comfortable asking for those, and whom you choose to ask will be important. Okay, I think we have gotten through these questions. We will keep going. The minimum pricing requirements are what we're talking about now. Here's where you've heard me say you have to have sold what you want to put on schedule before. That's true for product and it's true for services. You have to have an invoice for each SKU on your price list that you want to put on, and every labor category that you want to put on schedule. So it's called commercial sales practices. GSA is trying to evaluate how you sell to other customers. They want supporting documentation to prove that you have sold these things before. And here's the kicker. They want equal to or better than the best price that you've offered for any service or product to any customer. The only exclusion there is you can exclude when you are prime to the federal government. But when you work as a subcontractor, GSA defines that work as commercial. When you do work for state and local, they're defining it as commercial, or you can define it as state and local. But the point is GSA wants better than the best rate you've sold any product or any labor category, period, in the last 2 years. So there is a fair amount of backwards analysis that you have to do to be able to get on GSA schedule. How do you automatically know what the lowest price you charged? That might be a really easy thing for you to obtain, or a really hard thing. And some companies have extremely standardized commercial practices, so it doesn't strain. But if your pricing is all over the place for different products or services, the GSA schedule becomes far less attractive until you standardize your pricing a little bit more. Matthew asked, how does a company that does bespoke items show pricing if it literally might change per customer? The GSA schedule is for commercial items. It's not for bespoke items. So it's a very difficult thing to put custom products on GSA schedule. because there's no way to order. It's an off-the-shelf SKU and price. So unless you have sold enough that vary, that you're comfortable with having a full listing on GSA and you have invoice support for each one of them, it's not the right place to spell. In my opinion, I think it's very difficult. When you think, though, about the only other way around that is if you think about, I'm going to just throw out a prefab structure building. There may be a base model, and then rather than having to spec out each one, options that are, for this siding or for the, this square footage, adding a bathroom, whatever those things are. But the kicker there is you still have to have invoice support that demonstrates the options as well. So until you get to a place where you can sort of define a commercial price list and justify it, GSA Schedule would be hard to do. So let's talk about one of the reasons that I think people really back away sometimes from getting a GSA Schedule. So now they know they can, but do they want to agree to the pricing constraint that GSA Schedule has in the contract that requires you to have to be able to monitor your pricing, not only backwards, but forwards, to make sure that you don't violate what's called the price reduction clause. And we're going to talk about that. Michael asked, how should you report your pricing history if it's under a prime? It's what you invoice the prime, not what the prime invoices to the government. It's all your invoice support that is what's being ascertained here. What if your invoice support prices below what you would charge? I have rates established by my prime that I would charge more for LCAT. What would you recommend my company does? Yeah, that's the problem. GSA considers the work to be commercial, and it's what you invoice to the prime, not what the prime invoices to the government. So until you create different levels, and we'll talk about this, until you figure out how to raise your rates, it might not be beneficial for you to get on schedule, or you do with level 1 categories and later try to add level 2 or 3 with higher. But until you have invoice support of billing higher rates, that's impossible. You can't do it. So let's talk about why. The GSA has a goal to obtain better, and it's better. Their solicitation says equal or better, but it's really better. They're going to negotiate you to better than the best rate, which they define as the most favored customer rate for the similar terms and conditions and the item, whether that's a product or service. Pricing that's not determined by the government to be highly competitive will not be fair and reasonable and will not be awarded. We've had clients that had to walk away because they couldn't agree on price, the way that GSA defined fair and reasonable. And then you have to monitor the discount relationship between your most favored customer and GSA. And I'm going to give you some visuals and go through this. It's tedious, but it's extremely important to understand because it also is going to add in a level of compliance for those of you that are thinking about getting on a GSA schedule. One of the things is, do I want to tie my hands for non-federal customers by getting on the GSA schedule? And that's what we're talking about. The price reduction clause is the basis of award discount relationship. It says that has to be maintained through the life of the contract. So if you give GSA a discount off of your most favored customer price, whatever for an item, whatever that discount is, has to be maintained for the life of the contract, right? So you have to monitor any sales that are not to the federal government to ensure that you don't violate the price reduction clause. If you do bill lower than what was the most favored customer rate to someone where you are not the prime to the government, you have 15 days to notify GSA and reduce your product or labor category rate accordingly by the same percentage. So when you establish to create that discount percentage continuity. And so that sounds a little amorphous, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. But I also want to point out that the most favored customer and the basis of award might be different. The most favored customer is the customer who receives your best pricing. It's usually a class of customer, like all commercial customers. If you're only selling to the federal government, your most favored customer is the federal government. But you may name all commercial customers as the basis of award because the federal government is excluded from the price reduction clause. So when you're awarded, GSA will set with you the basis of award customer used to track that discount relationship. And it's not always the same as the MFC, especially in the example that I gave. If you're only doing prime work to the federal government, no sub work, no work elsewhere, they will be your most favored customer, but they cannot trigger a price reduction. I'm going to try and give you a visual of what we're talking about. So in this scenario, I'm a services company, and we're going to talk about my labor category for program manager. In different places, I have billed different things. So I have a prime contract, A, where I'm billing $150. I have a prime contract B, where I'm billing $125 for program manager. I have a subcontract where I am the subcontractor at $105, and a second subcontract where I'm billing $100. In this scenario, your most favored customer rate is $100. It's the lowest rate that you bill outside of the federal government for program manager. So GSA says, okay, you're filling out, you literally filling out a form that says the most favored customer rate, program manager, $100. The most favored customer versus GSA discount relationship is slightly different. So now my most favored customer rate, still on program manager, is $100. That's my floor for commercial work. I cannot bid below, moving forward, $100 for a program manager, because I've called it I've named it as my basis of award most favored customer rate. GSA required that we give them a 10% discount for award. So my GSA rate is $90 an hour. It's actually higher than that because you would add in the industrial funding fee, but for purposes of math, we'll do it this way. The discount relationship is 10% between my most favored customer and my award GSA rate. So they've awarded me $90, and that means for the life of the contract, whenever my GSA rates go up, I have to ensure that my commercial floor also goes up because I have to maintain the 10% discount relationship between the two. So you've got a commercial floor that is your most favored customer rates. You have a ceiling GSA rate. You can bid below GSA rate, but only when using the GSA schedule. You can give a spot discount below. So the only customer that's allowed to be in the red box that could be at $91 or $98, anywhere in that 10% range, is the federal government when you're not using the GSA schedule as the vehicle. That's the only time that you're allowed to price in there, because everything else needs to be at $100 or above, and GSA work needs to be $90 or below, right? The question came in, are these direct labor rates? No, they're fully burdened rates. When we talk about GSA, there is no cost buildup. You are providing invoice support of fully burdened labor rates. So the price reduction clause, what does it say? It says, okay, program manager, here you are, and we have this discount relationship as we just discussed, but now you have a big opportunity and you want to be able to give Lockheed Martin $95 for your program manager. So you can, in fact, do that. You have 15 days to then go into GSA and say, my new most favored customer rate is really $95, and to lower your GSA rate permanently to $85.50, 5% less than the current awarded. So you have triggered price reduction and you have lowered your GSA schedule rate. I can tell you a couple of things. One, there are ways around some of this stuff if you do this correctly. Could you have named a program manager 1 and 2 if you have different bill rates, so you didn't drop to the bottom initially? A difference in functional responsibility, a difference in education, a difference in years of experience, such that you can actually justify a level 1 and a level 2, and then to ensure that moving forward, you are using those on your invoices and your bids. So I like the idea for all companies to create an internal rate sheet that you start using with different levels and definitions, so that you are clear on what the differences are. But instead of giving a discount, you may give a lower level category and overstaff it, but on the invoice it's still going to say level 1. Stephanie has a good question. What if the rates go up in the middle of a 5-year GSA contract? Will the GSA officer honor that? You will likely, if we're talking about services, set your pricing with a set escalation factor that's going to go up by a percentage, maybe 3% or so is the current average every year. But remember that your prices are going to go up at random times, because your contract start date is just the day that you're awarded. What you have to be sure is the day that your rate increases, the next day, that you had never bill below 10% than the current awarded most favored customer rate. So if you have a 3% increase in GSA, so must all of your commercial work have a 3% increase if you're currently billing anyone at $100. So it becomes a complicated thing to track. And I should also mention that there is one way around this price reduction clause. GSA has opened a program called the Transactional Data Reporting Program. It is only open it's a pilot program, so it only works for certain special item numbers. But if you are willing to report your sales on a monthly basis and give all of the line item invoice data, you can remove the price reduction clause altogether from your contract, and you don't have to track any of this. However, there's a couple of caveats there. One, it doesn't apply across the board. Two, there's some danger in potentially having to provide the line item invoice data to GSA that can negotiate against this with you in the future when you go in for extensions. If they see that you're never billing your ceiling rates, they could potentially try to negotiate against you. The reason that GSA is doing it is to try to get more data, more pricing data, because the normal GSA contract that has the price reduction clause only reports sales quarterly, and you report by total contract value. There's no pricing data that they see at all, just the total that you billed through that period. So it's important to consider those things if your SIN is eligible for the transactional data reporting, and whether or not you want the additional administrative burden as well. All right, I've got a couple of questions. I know I always get a ton of pricing questions. It's an extremely complicated issue, and it's different than any other federal contract. As I said, GSA will not allow you to show your cost to get to a price. It is not a cost buildup. It's a fully burden rate system that you have to monitor and maintain backwards for the proposal and forwards for compliance. The question is, how do we set our initial rates if we've only done work with the federal government? The company has no commercial work to provide that floor. You actually, this is the kicker, you can use the government rates to be the floor. And by doing that, you will you will be able to actually set the most favored customer rate and name it to be commercial. Moving forward, you don't violate the price reduction clause when you can price however you want to the federal government. The problem is those rates might be lower, but if you don't have any other invoice support, they're going to negotiate you. That's your most favored customer rate, but your basis of award might be all commercial customers. So I feel like there is an additional ding against companies that are only doing work, but maybe not, because if you're doing prime work, your rates might be higher than as long as you're not doing subcontract work, which the irony is are usually lower than prime rates. And GSA wants better than the best rate commercially. So you might not be in a bad spot. You can still use your invoice support and list your MFC rates as the government contract. Thanks. Next question. We have been awarded a state level MAS and multiple award schedule in California for IT services and products. Our California MAS is based off our GSA MAS. When applying for GMAS, the GSA MAS, do we need to keep eyes on prices for our CMAS? You do. This is a great question. I would encourage the state of California, when you're making purchases, to make purchases through your GSA MAS. The part of the problem is when you just piggyback off the contract, unless you make a disclosure, which you could do, you could make a disclosure to your contracting officer that you're negotiating with, or that's maintaining your contract, just to make sure that it's on file, because you're going to need an exception. If you bill below your GSA prices, forget about your billing below your MFC prices. It's a problem, and it can be a violation of the price reduction clause if you're selling to the state of California under without having disclosed that to GSA. Okay, I think that takes care of these questions. Perfect. I'll keep going, and you can keep stopping me. So the question now is, assuming I haven't scared the heck out of you on the pricing issue, and you have the technical past performance, and you know that you're doing work with, well, I'll tell you, the VA buys a heck of a lot through the GSA schedule. So if that's your intended customer, that can be often a place that they look for purchase. So what do I do? How do I get started? First, you've got to download the GSA multiple award schedule solicitation. It is in sam.gov. I've got the listing on the next slide for you as well. It is not a certification. This is a full proposal. There is an administrative proposal, a technical proposal, and a price proposal. So you have to download the solicitation. I can't tell you how many attachments there are. You've got to read it, determine which special item numbers you actually qualify for. That's true for products, and it's true for services. You have to analyze the RFP and all of those attachments. There's an attachment of all the special item numbers, an Excel document to determine. You've got to go down through the professional categories and all of the large categories to subcategories down to individual SINs. I can tell you GSA believes a product has a single special item number. So you need to find the place where you believe purchase is going to happen. Once you've analyzed the RFP and the attachments, just like any other solicitation for your eligibility, I've given you the showstoppers, but there's a lot in this proposal. We've been doing these for 26 years for our clients, and GSA has never made it any easier. Unfortunately, it is a proposal unlike any other, and it's very important to spend some time in the solicitation and understanding. And then you have to be sure, I talked about this a little bit earlier, that you allocate the right resources for the GSA schedule process. Because there is no due date, because you may or may not have the right people internally, you might need to find someone externally. You might need to make sure that you have your pricing team available, the technical people, to pull all of the information that's needed. So I just think that that's an important thing to give yourself a project, because people come to us after 2 years and say, I've been trying at this thing for 2 years and I've never gotten it in because it keeps changing when I don't finish it and I have to start over. So make sure you do that. There is a question. We resell medical gases in different states. The margin is based on fuel costs for delivery. DOD and Army and the VA are the federal clients that we have. How do we proceed to account for fuel charges? It depends. You may want to get in touch with me. Every special item number is different, destination or origin. If it's origin, you simply bill for the travel. And if it's destination, that becomes far more complicated, because you're going to have to figure out how do you actually account for that at the time. I'm hopeful for your sake that it's an FOB origin that would allow you to bid the delivery cost as well at the time of order. But if you get back in touch with me, I can help you look that up as well. So here are the links that I was talking about. The first one is the website to the overall GSA listing for the multiple award schedule. There's a ton of information on the multiple award schedule here, and you'll have to click around and through to see all of it. But I think it's worth spending some time learning more if this is something you're interested in. GSA runs a website called Interact. This is where all their procurement notices and groups are. There is one specific to the multiple award schedule that's extremely helpful to keep up to date with changes, things that are going on. Recently, GSA put in place the JV instructions into the solicitation so that all small mentor proteges can go after a GSA schedule, but the instructions and the announcement of that went out through Interact. So it's a good place to keep your pulse. If you have questions on anything, there is a multiple award schedule PMO, a program management office, and their email is masspmo@gsa.gov. You can send your questions there. They generally answer within about a week. Here's a link to the solicitation on sam.gov as well. And that Schedule Z library link I gave you earlier. This is an extremely valuable link because it will help you search by search special item numbers, search contractors, see what's out there. Take a look at competitors' pricing before you decide to get on this schedule. If you're going to never be price competitive, this would be a waste of time. So do some research up front to determine the right special item numbers, to determine whether you're going to be price effective vice your competition. And the place to do that is on the Schedule Z library. There's also links to GSA Advantage and eBuy on that eLibrary link as well. And it's really a wealth of information. When I can't figure out where a certain product or service might belong, I go to the eLibrary and start keyword searching to see if it comes up under one of the special item number definitions. Question, are there any sites that provide training on how to properly use eOffer? I believe GSA actually has training on that on their website. But if they don't, I don't think anyone else does. Marilyn's bringing up something that I think to be extremely valid. One of the hardest parts of a GSA schedule offer is that the eOffer system is extremely clunky. It's an old technology, and it's extremely difficult to understand how to put up your proposal. A GSA schedule proposal is usually something between 30 and 50 individual files that have to be uploaded individually and by clicking upload buttons, not by dropping files. And the biggest problem is they have asterisks in red for things that you have to have. Well, there are another 20 things you have to have for each proposal that have no asterisk. So if you follow that system, you may well think that you have submitted a compliant proposal and you're going to do this a couple of times until you figure it out. I am not certain, but I do think that GSA has a tutorial, if not on their website. You can also check on YouTube because they have some that are up there. Is there a resource that can help us go through the Springboard GSA process? Assuming that you've sold enough and you have enough invoice history and financials to be able to get through the Springboard, you can go to any of the consultants that work on GSA. My firm has thousands and thousands of companies with Springboard as well as every other type of GSA schedule. We do have 100% success rate, but I also won't let you start unless I think it's going to be beneficial to you, because the can and the should are very important pieces to this puzzle. And sometimes you're going to need to have to wait. And sometimes you're ready. So feel free. My contact information is up on board, and we'll continue with questions for the next 15 or so minutes. But I'm happy to have a conversation and help you assess whether or not the timing is right. Often it's not that you shouldn't, it's that it's not the right time yet. And so it really just depends. And that answer isn't a static answer for everyone. It's different by each situation. So I'm happy to set up a call and have a conversation if helpful. Okay, Charles asked, how do we state our pricing is based on products expiration date, such as 6 months to expiration is less expensive than 12 months to expiration? Expiration meaning the last day you can put the product in to use and have a 2-year standard warranty. It's a pretty specific question. I think that as long as that's the way that you price commercially and it is explained in your price list, then those are 2 separate SKUs, and you just need to make sure you demonstrate it that way. Can you do teaming? You can do teaming through GSA. Multiple awardees. So those of you on the webinar today, if you have a GSA schedule, you can team with another GSA schedule holder or 2 or 3 to provide a total solution. So it's called contractor teaming arrangements, and it means that each company has privity of contract, meaning that you're all prime and responsible for your portion of the sales that run through your labor categories or products, your contract number, and you each submit your own industrial funding fee as a part of that. When you guys are when are you going to share the file or recording of these sessions over email, as this is our last session? Thanks, Jay. I don't know, Aaron, what's the answer to when this file goes up?
I just typed back. We are going to upload
sorry.
them to our website tomorrow, and we will send all the attendees an email to remind them and let them know when it is available tomorrow.
Thank you. All right, once we get a GSA mass, how do we get our target purchasers to purchase from us? Well, that is $1 million question. You have to proactively market this vehicle. If I haven't said it today yet, you don't get on GSA Schedule hoping that people are going to find you. You get on a GSA or any contract vehicle to proactively drive business development and contracts to you. So you do all of the other types of business development activities, but you try to lead the conversation to, once you have an awarded contract, that when you're talking to either the program management office, the contract office, have you considered, we have a GSA schedule, here's the special item number I think it should release under for scope. And I would strongly recommend to talk about putting it aside for any of the socioeconomic indicators that you may hold on that contract as well. It is a misnomer, although I did say that market research is a service, that RFI, it's possible that you will identify some business by getting on the contract. But the truth is it is really a closure tool more than anything else. It's extremely powerful if done well with proactive BD and capture. But getting on schedule and hoping that your phone rings between 5,000 other IT contractors would be a silly notion from that standpoint. Can a non-GSA company team with a GSA contractor to compete in GSA Mass? Oh, that's a wonderful question. No. So you can't team together for a GSA schedule at the master contract level. You can team together after you have your contract, but other than a JV, a formal all small mentor protege JV, you cannot use each other's past performance invoices or pricing. All past performance has to reside in the UEI, the unique entity identifier number that is actually submitting for this contract. So each contractor, you cannot use your subsidiaries, you cannot use sister companies' past performance or invoices. It has to be within your own UEI and within the last 2 years. I have a facilities maintenance company that specializes in janitorial. Each state has a different labor rate for janitorial workers. How can I fully burden rate for GSA without violating the price reduction clause? I do not like GSA schedules for SCLS, the Services Contract Labor Standards, or wage determined positions for the reason that Stephanie's talking about. It is absolutely true that I could violate price reduction because I'm doing work in Louisiana rather than New York, and the wage determination is lower. Unfortunately, the only way around that is to set pricing in each state. Okay, that's okay. I could have janitorial in, a different rate based on wage determination in every state. The problem is I'm only going to be awarded on GSA those for which I have invoices. So if I've only ever done work in Louisiana and New York, and I differentiate in that way, those are the only states I'm going to be able to price and perform in. So it's a double-edged sword, and having regional pricing in any way is absolutely allowed, but you have to have done it in order to get it that way on GSA. I will caution you as well that facilities maintenance requires, there is a facilities maintenance special item number, but you have to do multiple things to be able to qualify. If you're only doing janitorial, you will not be able to get your own GSA schedule contract. But if you're doing janitorial, but you also do lawn cutting or there's all sorts of facilities maintenance, elevator maintenance, painting, any of those sorts of things. Janitorial just by itself is actually not on GSA schedule, but I would also venture to say that that the way around that may be to look at those companies that are on the facilities maintenance special item number, because they need janitorial support, right? So perhaps being a subcontractor, you will alleviate any issues with the price reduction and also be able to see who has that contract, because they're running whole buildings. GSA runs a public building service that uses a lot of the GSA schedule, and they're the largest landlord in the world. So they have companies that are focused in all sorts of areas for running the facilities for them as prime contractors. But I can guarantee you they're not hiring all their own staff. So that's another great way to think about subcontract work and roundabout way GSA work, just not on your own GSA contract. Okay, and you're welcome to type in any other questions you may have. I know we're getting closer to the end, but I appreciate being able to be here with you. You have my contact information, and feel free to reach out. I don't want anyone going down this road unnecessarily. I think there's a ton of value in this contract, but timing and understanding whether or not it's right for you is extremely important. So thank you so much.